Righty, how is everyone doing? It's been a while since I have posted on this very channel, but how are you guys doing today, man? I'm doing good myself. I appreciate you for asking. In case you're curious, in today's video, I am going to discuss my overall final impressions on the Invincible versus beta. So, in case you guys don't know, right, I am definitely familiar with the franchise. I know the characters, I know the powers and stuff like that. It's a long story, but I've been knowing the franchise for some years now since the animated series came out and stuff like that. However, I have heard about this fighting game for a while now, and ever since it got announced back in June of last year, I think, it got to a point to where I was like, okay, Invincible has a fighting game, cool. I wasn't really deep into it like everybody else were at that time, but I've heard they had a closed alpha. I couldn't get into it because I was mighty busy at that time last year too, so I didn't get into the first beta. But as soon as I've heard that they have an open beta that includes 10 characters and supposedly 3 modes, right, I was like, oh snap, they have an open beta. Okay, let me go ahead and check it out for the one time. And so I did, and not gonna lie, the first time I hopped on the game, when I got into practice mode, and yes, when it comes to fighting games, at least these days, I have been learning my lesson. I normally lab before I even get into a single match because I cannot stand getting rusty to the point where I just hop into a match randomly knowing that I had yet to lab at that point. Okay, so I did myself a favor and went to the practice mode instantly, and I learned a few of the combos. I also did the tutorial as well on top of that, so I was getting the hang of what the game felt like, mechanically. So I've gotten used to the buttons and the controls and moves and stuff like that, so it didn't really take me that long to adjust to what's going on. Once I got into my first set of online matches, on the other hand, it was a bit chaotic. Okay, let's just say that. And so I have never played this game before up until that point. So when I first got into online, and mind you, the main mode online was pretty much ranked matches. Okay, for whatever reason, they didn't have a casual match mode, even though looking back, I would have appreciated it had they added that into the beta. But I can easily tell, you guys know how these fighting game betas go. Whenever they have an open beta or a closed alpha, whatever, they normally prefer ranked match mode than pretty much any other mode aside from training, that is. And so part of me wished there was a casual mode so I can get further practice in, but then again, the other part of me understood eventually as to why they did it. So regardless of the case, I went to ranked matches after labbing, and I was average for best or worse. I did get a couple of dubs here, I did get destroyed there. It was a bit of a rocky road. Okay, I was getting my tail handed left and right. My first session was all over the place, and it got to a point to where I legit hit my limit mentally. And believe it or not, when I first noticed that these people who were playing the beta, for the most part at least, were doing nothing but extended assist tag combos in midair. They were doing extended midair tag combos, and it got to a point where I legit rage quitted twice. I promise you, I'm not joking. I was at my limit mentally. And so my first session did not end on a good note, but the next day I persevered. I learned my lesson. I was like, you know what, if this is going to be the meta, let me see if I can adapt to that. You know what I'm saying? So I had to rethink my strategy and this and that. So I went back to labbing, I went back to practice mode, and low-key, once I hopped into another session of online matches, I understood the assignment. I watched how every person was playing with their own specific patterns while learning how to do an extended tag combo in midair. And once I figured that out later on during that day, I was like, yo, I understand the assignment. So I did just that, right? I learned the patterns, and the next thing you know, I was low-key dominating, okay? And I'm not even the type to boast about this, especially online, because I know how some people be egotistical and all that stuff. That's not me no more, okay? I've been trying to move on past that phase. So long story short, I felt satisfied after every win, and I felt humble after every loss. I was basically taking those L's to the chin, man, like a normal man would. Like I said, I was learning my lesson, trying not to rage quit while giving every person a chance to rematch me, whether I win or lose. Unlike these one and dones who be quitting after just one single match in this game, bro. I promise you, holy smokes, I cannot stand them so much, but I will elaborate on that later in this video. But for the most part, throughout my 3 days of playing this open beta, low-key, I had a solid time. Like, I really did have a solid time. I would be sitting here lying to you right now if I didn't, but I did, okay? After learning the pattern and the extended combos and what the meta quote-unquote cares about and this and that, when I tried to adapt, as promised, I learned my lesson and I followed the assignment. I was low-key dominating, especially on my second and third day on the beta. Anyways, enough showboating. Let's get right into my initial impressions. Now that the beta is over, let me start off with this. Visually, the game looks cool, okay? Now, I know it's not the best graphics in the world, but I mean, this is based on a comic book, so I mean, it makes sense to have this kind of animated art style. But I will say though, for example, Omni-Man's super finisher, whatever you want to call it in this game, if we're just talking straight up visuals, that was one of the most impressive looking supers I've seen in this game, hands down. And I am not even a laser of this man. I am talking strictly from the guts and the guts only. So the visuals, you know, it looks alright, you know, it looks cool. Then the gore factor, as far as the blood and gore, it's pretty much out of this world. I mean, it is Invincible. You know, what do you expect? Of course, it's going to be so much dismemberment here and so much mutilated gibs and, you know, guts spilling out all over the place and all that sort of stuff. So I expected this kind of violence from the gameplay I've seen, especially. Gameplay wise, it's functional. You know, it's smooth. It's pretty straightforward. I know the game, as far as like, you know, the combos and all that stuff, it can be a bit, you know, mash friendly, as some would call it. Even though I personally had no big issue with it, as long as the game is playable from start to finish, then I'm all straight. That's really all I care about, especially when it comes to a fighting game in this day and age. The online connectivity, as I mentioned earlier in the video, that was a bit of an issue if you'd ask me. It was more of a nitpick than anything. Half of the time, you know, someone would disconnect from rage quitting. Other times it would say, oh, a network error has occurred. There were certain times to where I couldn't tell if it was the game servers that were acting up or it was just the players themselves disconnecting after a single match. I can't even tell. I've heard this was an issue for some people as well who played the beta, and now this has happened to me too. And for those of you that keep on rage quitting more than I had at one point, just get better, okay? There's a practice mode for a reason. It's like these guys don't know there was a practice mode the entire time. It's like, what is up with these folks? You know what? Let me make this a short and sweet PSA, okay? Because I think it's only right to do this. I have zero clue why some of these people who play fighting games for a living, or any video game for that matter, cannot take a single loss to the chin, whether it's a small one or a big one. Now, mind you, I am no expert speaker by any means, but I will say on behalf of my personal experience, for those of you that keep on rage quitting non-stop, becoming a one and done player, I'm looking at you. I'm talking directly to you. What kind of benefit would you gain from rage quitting at a game, let alone an open beta, for goodness sake? Are you guys really that mental to where you guys pretend like there's no practice mode when there really is a practice mode? And on top of that, even if you do lose, you know you can actually get better by adapting and learning from your own mistakes. You know that, right? So in other words, adapt if you can. Get better like me. Learn your lesson. That's a short PSA from yours truly. My God, man. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say. Overall, I thought the Invincible versus beta was a cool beta through and through. I had a solid time. You know, it's an all-right experience, man. It was all right.